The Richie Allen Show, live on Talk Radio Europe, Fab Radio International, and DavidIke.com. And now, live from Manchester, England, here is Richie Allen.
Let's welcome back my first guest of the programme. He was good and kind enough to feed an excellent report into the show from Austria a couple of months back when the Bilderberg meeting was taking place. He's a terrific journalist. He really is. In an era when there's an absolute massive shortage of journalists, this guy's the real deal. He's also an activist and a human rights campaigner. I'll give you all the website details for Press for Truth and all of that in a few minutes' time, as well as tweeting those details out. It's a real pleasure to welcome back to the programme Dan Dix. Dan, how are you?
I am great. Much appreciated, Richie. Thanks for having me.
It's an honour to have you. Thanks for introducing us, by the way, to Jeff Berwick. Jeff was really good last night on the programme. I had a really interesting debate with him. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. No, I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah, he's a good guy. I didn't like looking at him in Acapulco with that lovely bay behind him. I thought he had a green screen thing going on, Dan, but it turned out to be the real thing.
No, I witnessed it myself. It's pretty sweet down there.
That's lousy, yeah. To be lectured on economics by a guy sitting in paradise, eh?
Yeah.
But you have to take that, don't you, sometimes? I want to ask you this. David Icke, our mutual friend and colleague in the independent media, David said something to me more than once over the last few years. Mm-hmm. He said it's in his opinion that while a lot of us think because of Canada's proximity to the United States, we often see Canada as this kind of bastion of liberty and of common sense because of its proximity to the United States. But David said, in his opinion, and he doesn't have any particular downer on Canada, but he thinks it's one of the most controlled countries in the world. Is he right?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's no doubt in my mind that the perception of Canada around the world is not exactly quite how it is here. We are under a tyrannical regime here. I mean, it's very, very similar to what we're seeing with their brothers to the south. I mean, our parties are completely controlled here. We do have more parties, so it's not really a two-party system similar to the States. So there's the illusion of more choices, I guess you could say. But they're all just as bought and controlled and as the rest of them. So, you got somebody like Stephen Harper, for example. He's prime minister of the country, and well, he was relatively unknown when he popped up out of nowhere back in 2003 when he was invited to the Bilderberg meeting in 2003, and then sure enough, a couple of years later, he becomes prime minister. And so now we have guys like Mulcair and Justin Trudeau now running as this opposition to him, and we know Trudeau's dad went to Bilderberg, and I didn't see Trudeau at Bilderberg this year, but his father's been. So certainly we're under a same amount of control. I think people witnessed that too when the G20 came here, and we all saw the police state kind of for the first time really hit us right in the face. But yeah, no, we're under heavy, tight control here, just like the States.
Now, we mentioned Harper. You do see a lot on social media of articles being shared from any number of sites. Now, by the way, Press for Truth's website, folks, is pressfortruth.ca. It's a great website. The articles are brilliantly sourced and well written by Dan and his colleagues. But leaving Press for Truth and DavidIke.com and one or two others to one side, Infowars to one side, there are a lot of nonsensical alleged independent media websites around the web, and they make all sorts of claims a lot of the time that when you look into their claims, you find that it's not true. One of the things we're seeing a lot of, and I think it might sadly be true, is the news that the Canadians or the Canadian government might be cracking down on people supporting the BDS movement, the boycott, diversity and sanction movement against Israel. What's the latest on that? Are the Canadian government going after people supporting that movement?
Yes, actually. They're particularly Stephen Harper's, conservative governments have been silencing anybody who's trying to speak out about that in any way. I can't remember the name of the article we did on that about about three weeks ago or so on Press for Truth. But certainly, the Harper government has been pretty strict on keeping a tight lip on all of that here.
Isn't that amazing, isn't it? When you think, I mean, it must be hurting the Israeli government to some extent for them to be reacting like that. I mean, we heard in recent weeks, we've heard former Israeli foreign ministers, we've heard from Israeli members of the Knesset coming out equating people who support the BDS movement to Nazis effectively. It's extraordinary. I mean, I don't see. There's been no real mention of it here in Britain. I've never heard a British politician say anything about the BDS movement, but maybe you know that will happen imminently.
Well, meanwhile, big things are going on behind the scenes with Canadian entrepreneurs and politicians. I mean, for example, Heather Reisman, who is a Canadian, she's on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. Her and her husband, who run something called Chapters and Indigo Books, they have been some of the biggest funders of it's this Israeli private army. It's a private army, and this is relatively unknown. They've been kind of secretly funding this thing for years, but it's interesting how there's things going on behind the scenes, and then up front, nobody's allowed to talk about anything.
Yeah, it's absolutely right, isn't it? I mean, I've been looking through the articles on Press for Truth today. There's an excellent article on there about why politics is a waste of time. It's kind of timely because I've been talking about the background. The last 2 or 3 nights of this program, I've started to kind of give a little bit more information to people who maybe don't know it about the backgrounds of the career politicians. You know, where they came from. The think tanks they were involved in, where their families came from, and you know they all tend to have the same story. While we're on that, I've had a few tweets for you already with questions for you. One coming in from Ian Tinsley. Ian says, Richie, ask Dan if Jeb Bush was at Bilderberg this year. I know he was in Austria at the same time. Was Jeb Bush there?
I can't confirm that. Not that I'm aware of. I didn't personally see him with my own eyes or get footage or get a picture or anything. So I can't confirm that. But I mean, it's very, very quite possible. And even with what I saw with my own eyes of the Bilderberg room itself, they had a huge TV screen in there in the front of the room. So it's quite possible they're using it for presentations or also to Skype people in. Maybe not Skype, some other program, to bring people in on the conversation. So if he wasn't there in person, he very well could have been there digitally as well.
Yeah, Dan, of course, had a great success at Bilderberg in kind of infiltrating the actual venue, the hotel itself, which he described to us last time he was on, which was absolutely terrific. It really was. I suppose the flip side of it is, Dan, you're going to be known now, aren't you? So it's going to be more difficult for you to do it in future, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's already starting to get like that when I show up to these things. Last year in Copenhagen, before I got arrested, the guy said, "I know who you are. We know what you do. We know what you're doing here." And then this year again, the guy, when he saw me in the airport, recognized me. And so, yeah, it's getting a little bit trickier, but we're not going to let that stop us. That's for sure.
I think what we need to do is start to GoFundMe, and we need to get you and Rutkowski some sort of plastic surgery or something like that.
Actually,
we could do that, you know.
Well, that's I appreciate that you mentioned that. Actually, Luke and myself did launch a fundraising campaign to help us with our efforts to expose Bilderberg. We designed a T-shirt, an Investigate Bilderberg T-shirt, and it says Investigate Bilderberg on the front, and on the back it says the revolution will not be in your newsfeed. And it's available at teespring.com/BilderbergTees.
Brilliant. It's also on pressfortruth.ca. There's links to it on there as well on the homepage. Yeah.
So that goes towards helping me and Luke Radowski continue to travel to Bilderberg.
And I do like this, I have to say. I do like that way of doing things, Dan. A friend of ours, well, I say a friend, he's only a new friend of mine, Max Bliss, who's all over geoengineering and chemtrail spraying, and really smart guy. Max is going to be speaking to the Environmental Protection Agency quite soon. He's listed as a speaker, and he was able to get these travel expenses covered by again using one of these campaigns. I think it's a great way of doing it because everybody has a stake in it then. And it makes perfect sense to me. So go to pressfortruth.ca. The t-shirts look very nice, actually, I have to say that. So no, they do. They look well designed. Tell us about this Colorado River mess, Dan, because I get it, like yourself, any of us that are making shows or writing articles, people all the time ring you, email you or tweet you, and they expect you to have answers. No, I never have any answers. I've only got questions.
About what? Sorry?
Well, about the Colorado River spill and the toxic mine water there, that it still is a big story, and the MSM is covering it. People saying that, people ringing me up, I say ringing me up, but Skyping me and emailing me saying that you don't accidentally release that amount of toxic mine water into a river. There's always the suspicion in the independent media that not all is meeting the eye, so to speak. What are you hearing about why that happened, that toxic spill into that river, and what does it mean?
Honestly, I haven't really heard a whole lot about why or what that could have been caused from. But we do know, I mean, just by looking at past, you just look in the history at these types of things, and often, you do find out that there were some malpractices, there were some people doing some bad things. It's tough to say, though. I don't know enough about that to speak on it.
Well, we only have to mention the Deepwater Horizon spill, which if ever there was a suspicious accident that's destroyed much of the Gulf region, and we know through people like Jesse Ventura's son, Tyrell, and one or two others, that the military in that part of the world even admitted that they wanted to depopulate that entire area. So it's not beyond the bounds of possibility that destroying people's water supply to get them out of play. And that's what fracking is all about, of course.
Right. I'm actually out here on the West Coast. I don't know if you knew that. I'm in Vancouver now. I moved from Toronto. And over here, I mean, we're starting to potentially get some radiation from the Fukushima leak, coming all the way over to the West Coast and potentially tainting our seafood and stuff like that. So there's even people out here on the West Coast who are afraid to go have sushi because of Fukushima.
Wow. Tell me this, Dan. Is anybody that is trustworthy or reliable sampling seawater samples on the west coast of Canada and on the west coast of the United States? Because there was a couple of big scare stories a couple of years ago. Somebody went on, you might remember the YouTube video where somebody had a Geiger counter. Do you remember that? Yeah. And I think they were on a beach in California somewhere, and the Geiger counter looked like it was going off the bloody charts with the reading, the decibel, whatever the readings are called, whatever they are. Yeah. Has anybody that we can trust, reliable, done any sort of serious examination of water quality? Yes.
I have. I got a Geiger counter, and I think hooked up with somebody who knew what they were doing and was a professional in that field. And we went down and did that. I made a video about that a little while ago. But I'm not an expert by any means, but there are other people here. There's some friends of mine who are involved with We Are Change, and they are We Are Change Victoria is what they go by. They're We Are Change Victoria, and they have been collecting all kinds of samples and getting them into the proper labs, and are in the middle of doing this right now. So there are good, solid people out here, namely Josh Steffler of We Are Change Victoria, who's been collecting this stuff for the last year now, and trying to get it into the proper labs.
And waiting for results now, Dan.
People working on it.
And yes, right now we're waiting for results. Is that right? Oh, it's I mean, for the benefit of our listeners who maybe aren't following that story, hundreds of gallons of contaminated water are still pouring into the sea from that site. They haven't a clue how to deal with it. I was listening to BBC Radio 5 Live 3 or 4 days ago. I jog a few kilometres every morning, early in the morning. I listen to it, and they were even saying the TEPCO just don't have a clue. They have no idea how to stop that contaminated groundwater getting into the sea, and have been playing this game ever since that disaster, that no amount of it could ever be enough, because the ocean is so vast. The whole idea, the public is supposed to believe that this will evaporate in the water, it will dissolve to nothing in the water, but yet there are people whom are well versed in atomic energy and nuclear energy and in nuclear waste and radiation, who are saying that's not true, that this could be doing irreversible, deadly damage to the Pacific Ocean. It's incredible, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what are we going to do about it, I suppose? I mean, I can't wait to get those results. I mean, we'll keep in touch with pressfortruth.ca to find out what those samples actually say. We got Dan Dix on from pressfortruth.ca. Keep those emails and questions coming in. Susan has just sent me a tweet. How you doing, Susan? Canada is under control of JDL, she says, led by Mayor Halevi Weinstein, considered a terrorist group in the United States, says Susan. Thanks for that, Susan. Let me just move down. Carl is in Canberra, just retweeting the website there as well. Wayne was on to say, I would use Dan and Luke as lures now, as they are better known, and allow new blood to slip into areas of Bilderberg, etc. I think my idea is best. We'll get a GoFundMe campaign and we'll get the guy some plastic surgery. That won't do them any harm at all. You must be watching the alleged race for the White House, the Republican nomination race, with great mirth, Dan, with great laughter, or is it complete frustration watching it? How are you reading all of this?
Well, it's funny. It's timing wise, we have an election going on right now as well here in Canada. So it's interesting to watch it at the same time in the States and what's going on here in Canada. But man, everything I've seen from down there is quite the stage show, with Donald Trump getting in on the action. But down here, it's just as much as a stage show. It's just as much as a big show here. We got Justin Trudeau, for example, who's riding on the weed ticket, we call it. He's trying to get the legalization of marijuana vote, and we all know right now that we know politicians promise things and then never ever deliver. So we don't think that legalization of marijuana, which does seem to be coming, is going to happen under Trudeau. And if it does, it's not going to be the kind of legalization that Canadians want, or that the medical patients here want. So right now, there's big things going on in the field of medical marijuana in Canada, and there's industries completely trying to take this over. Basically, I call it Marijuana Inc. is coming in and trying to set up what's called licensed producers here, and the government is only issuing licensed producers to all their crony capitalist friends. And long story short, what's happening here in BC is they're wiping out all the mom and pop grow shops, what's now called designated growers. They have designated growers for medical patients here in Canada, 40,000 patients. They're wiping all of them out and giving the licenses to these government insiders. And so there's a huge takeover of the marijuana industry happening right now. And we got politicians like Justin Trudeau just riding in on this, trying to get that vote. Meanwhile, it's just these crony capitalists trying to take over the whole thing. Yeah.
And that's I remember a couple of years ago covering the story in Holland, where coffee shop owners their businesses were being destroyed because the government was basically saying you can't serve tourists. I remember they were bringing that in, and they were making life very difficult for them. And at the time, somebody was saying, well, what they're really trying to do is pave the ground, or lay the ground down for them eventually to take it over themselves, the government. And at the time, I thought that was a bit of a conspiracy theory, but of course it's panned out like that. And we're seeing that around the world now. Can I ask you about something? You obviously know Jeff Berwick well, and you've spoken with Jeff. What do you make of Jeff's... I nearly said prophecy. Of course it isn't a prophecy. It's a prediction. Is that we're going to see a pretty big financial crisis event or meltdown of some description in September. And his idea of the 7-year Shemitah. What do you make of all of that?
I think... It's certainly possible there's something there. I mean, we know that the dollar there's going to be an inevitable crash. I mean, that's the only logical conclusion. That's the only place it can go when you continue to print money the way they're doing. It is going to happen. So I guess the question is more so about how soon or when is this going to happen. And Jeff is suggesting that this is going to be happening as soon as next month, based on the 7-year cycle of this Shemitah. I believe it's ancient Jewish thing from the Jewish Talmud, I believe. I'm not positive, but whether it's going to happen this September or not, it's bold to make a prediction, but I do think something is going to happen. It's just to put a date on it, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I asked them last night, was the Chinese devaluation of their own currency maybe the beginning of it, where we've seen the early stages of something to happen? And I found Jeff very, very amenable and a really good guy and easy to get on with. And he said, well, I don't know if it is or if it isn't, but of course it is a very serious thing. I've had a couple of emails, one from Buzz, and Buzz says that he's been told by people like Simon Parks and Corey Good, amongst others, that we're getting into not the supernatural maybe, but the otherworldly here. Buzz is saying that these people are saying that ET friends or non-human friends are already at work to try and clean up the oceans because the technology exists already. But before that, he did say that the radiation has been looked at by Lorraine Murray, and she has many videos about all that stuff. He says, now I know about Lorraine Murray, I've interviewed Lorraine before. Whether she's sampling water there, and I don't know, I'll have to look into that myself. Thanks for your email, Buzz. Yeah, no two ways about that. Do you have any comment on that, on Lorraine Murray and radiation? And I don't know if she has looked at anything, Dan, if she's taken any samples. I have no idea.
Oh, yeah, I have no idea. I'm not really familiar with that.
Yeah, Lorraine is, she's been talking about nuclear technology and the dangers of it in power stations and depleted uranium munitions for many, many years. She's been on my programme several times, but not recently. It must be said, not recently. Dan, what do you reckon then? Are you love talking to correspondents like you from Canada and North America. Are you watching the child sex abuse scandal unfolding here in the UK and all the developments about former prime ministers? Are you paying attention to that, Dan? And if so, what have you made of it?
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing that, a lot of stuff being uncovered over there. And to be honest, I just think it's more proof that goes to show that the people in these high positions of power are beyond sick psychopaths. I think it's quite literally satanic and Luciferian even, where these people think that they are doing a good thing. I mean, Hitler thought he was doing a good thing, right? He thought he was helping the world. These people are so far gone that that's how far gone they is. So when I hear of these things, it's to me proof in my mind that this is a satanic Luciferian agenda that is being worked through people.
What is interesting about it, Dan, is that no matter how many roadblocks they put in the way of justice in terms of appointing people to head up the inquiries that turn out to be plants or ringers because they know some of the accused. I'm thinking of Fiona Woolf and Elizabeth Butler-Sloss. No matter how many times they do that, no matter what they try and do, it's not stopping the stories coming out and the information coming out. That's a really positive thing. It's a truly awful story in every sense of the word. But what's positive about it is that it's coming out, and it's coming out at a rate of knots.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's what we have to continue to do in this is continue to expose that kind of corruption. And what we are involved with really is shining a light on the darkness, exposing these things and shining the light and showing the world, look at what's going on here in the hopes of, changing things and turning it around and showing people that this is what's going on. And things aren't going to change unless people are aware that things are going on in the first place, right? So I guess that's where we come in. Well,
you're doing a terrific job at pressfortruth.ca. People get on there. There are links on there to buy those T-shirts that Dan is talking about. Dan, nice to hear from you again. Continued success to you and all the team at Press for Truth. A pleasure to have you on. You're welcome back anytime, my friend. Thanks again.
Thanks so much. Take care, man.
Look after yourself, Dan. Dan Dick's on the line to us there from Vancouver in British Columbia. I did think he was in Toronto, but he's moved. He's moved to the west coast there.